Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Doug of the Dead Daisies to talk about the upcoming album Holy Ground, out January 22nd. How's it going?
Good, Pedro. Thanks for having me, bro. Thank
Well,
you.
thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. The first question that I have for you about this record is, how do you guys manage the workload, the creative process, when you have so many creative guys, so many talented musicians in the band?
Well, it's been different, with the prior lineups. This lineup that we have with Glenn Hughes. Glenn wanted to bring in some song ideas that he had for the band, and I wanted to bring in some song ideas. So we primarily, the two of us, started preparing ideas, but then we all got together, and everyone's really open to helping everybody else out with their ideas, musically speaking, and trying to bring the best out of everybody's songs that we can. So like then at a certain point we can present everything to the producer and make a decision which songs we're going to focus on. Basically, to answer your question, you got to check your ego at the door and be open to basically just being productive with each other on whatever ideas you have.
I mean, you've worked on a lot of different records. You've worked with a lot of different people. And I'm sure every time you go into an album, there's also something challenging that pops up. Was there something different about this record? Was that something challenging, something new that you guys had to overcome in the construction of this album?
It's not challenging, really. It was fun, because we were holed up in south of France. We recorded it at a chateau, like a big ass building, has studio and sleeping quarters attached, kind of like it's like that with a lot of studios in Europe. There's band will camp out there, and we found this place really reasonable, and it was a great studio, and we got a great drum sound. We lived together there, ate together, we slept under the same roof, and we created a lot of focused music. So there was no real challenges, other than that, when you make a member change like we have, you have to give it time to gel. So that was a perfect situation for us to do that.
One of the things that I took listening to the album, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is, as a fan, this is my perception after listening to the record, is that this album has three different faces of rock and roll. It has arena style sounding rock and roll. It has the more garage band approach, and also a little bit of that smaller venue, grittier sound. Do you feel like that's a good way to define the overall experience of traveling through this record?
I think everyone's got to make their own thing. I hear it a little differently. I hear it being kind of a throwback to the 70s in some ways. It's a little more organic, but at the same time, it's a big sounding record to me. But everyone will make their own distinction about it. I mean, I haven't really thought about it. I did my best on the songs and bringing the songs that I brought in, and they got better when the band got involved with them. Same thing with Glenn's songs, and then with Ben Gross, who produced the album. I think he made a really cool sound for us. It's a little different than the past albums. Maybe it's a little heavier. The guitar sounds maybe a little more in your face and some stuff. And yeah, we're really happy with it. We hope everybody likes it, for sure.
You mentioned about the volume, having a lot of volume. That's one thing that I noticed as well, that this album has a lot of sound, has a rich aroma. It has a rich warmth to the way the sound comes across. Is that something that you guys had in mind, that you wanted the album to have that rich approach?
I think, yeah, we wanted it to be a warmer sounding album because of, all the digital technology that's out there. Sometimes stuff ends up getting really top endy, and brittle sounding sometimes, and digital sounding. So we really wanted to have the technology be available to us as far as digital stuff, but we wanted it to be a warm record that would remind people of the records that they liked in the 70s.
Yeah, not overly produced, not overly clean, a little bit more organic, that you could almost like you can feel like you were there when it was being recorded.
Yeah, that's kind of like, and like you said, that's maybe what you were talking about with the garage thing. It's that it's organic and it feels like you're kind of in the room.
Yeah, and I felt like that essence is definitely present throughout the album as you navigate through it. But it also has that big sound that you expect when you go see an arena rock and roll band playing in front of you. So you guys were able to capture all of those different emotions, but package them very well across the whole record.
Well, thanks, bro. We had a great time making it. It was, you know, we really focused, and it's not like a bunch of songs chucked together. I mean, we we put our everybody put their best foot forward on each song, and then Glenn tied it all together lyrically into a really cool thing that basically is pretty deep. You know, there's a lot of one of the things I love about his lyrics is that there's room for the listener's interpretation. He's not telling you, you know, stand up and shout, for example. He's telling you that, you know, it, he's painting a picture that you can kind of fill in the blanks with.
I felt that his impact on this record, obviously on a vocal perspective, there's definitely an impact, but also on the bass. There's a lot of bass on this album. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I love it. He's got a ferocious bass sound. His live, his bass sound is so badass, and I wanted to, you know, express my support of that on the album. You know, like I wanted that big bass sound to be captured on the album. It's a little different to do that, you know, because live you've got, you know, your ears are the thing that you're hearing, and you're hearing his fingers through the amp going into your ears. It's different when you put a microphone on it and try and capture it. You have to, but I thought that Ben Gross did a great job at that. And his, you know, when he went in to go do the mixes, he said to us, "What do you guys, you know, any comments you want to?" It's pretty much with me and Glenn. He was just asking, "Is there anything you want me to, you know, is there some adjustments that I should make or know about just beforehand?" And Glenn just goes, "Just make sure you can hear everything I played," and that's it. Pretty simple, you know, because he didn't have to go like, "Well, at the end of the first verse on Holy Ground, can you raise the guitar, and then can you bring the solo down a little bit, or can you bring the vocal up a little bit?" There was nothing like that. It was just like, just make sure you can hear everything I played. That's what Glenn said. I thought that was great, you know. And he said the other day on an interview, I thought it was a good thing, that the notes that he leaves out are almost just as important as the notes that he plays. So you want to be able to hear it when he's not playing too. So yeah, I'm a big fan of his sound and his playing, and he goes off a lot too. He'll, like, you know, like I'll be doing a solo and he'll be throwing in some licks underneath it, and it's like, right on. I love that, you know.
And that gives more texture to the overall sound, and it makes the sound more robust, bigger, and gives that warmth that I was talking about earlier, I think.
Yeah, I just like it that we're kind of, it's a little bit in the way that Cream, Jack Bruce used to play underneath Clapton when he was soloing and stuff, and it's fun, especially live, man. It's like, it's really, really good with him.
Yeah, I love the bass on this record. I really do. I thought it was one of the elements that stands out when you're listening to the album, because it's always there. Sometimes a little bit more in the forefront, sometimes a little bit more in the back, but it's always so groovy, and you can always tell it when it's there. It makes the songs feel just that much better. Like, it makes the whole album have like this heartbeat.
Yeah, I agree. You know, what's interesting too is that we were, during the lockdown period, we would say do like these little playthroughs where we had released Unspoken and Bustle and Flow, and we'd do a playthrough of Bustle and Flow showing how to play it, and each time we would, like, if it was Glenn's playthrough, I would go to his place and I would get the session with the original album tracks, and I'd do a mix, but I'd take his bass out of the mix and then have his new bass coming into the recording session, and I crank it. It was super loud. You can see it on YouTube. And so it's like a bass way up mix. Really cool. And then, so he's not playing exactly the same thing as on the record. I mean, the riffs are the same, the parts are the same, but the in-between parts on the corners, he's going for it. Like I told him, I go, don't worry. He goes, I don't really remember exactly what I did. And I go, don't worry about it. Just play, man. Just have fun. Because it's all about, you know, he's playing live to the album with that has no bass. And it sounds awesome. We put a little fuzz on his bass and it was just great.
His addition doesn't only bring the bass, but it also obviously brings the vocals. Now,
Yeah.
do you feel like this is a record where you have the best songs for the right vocalist, or do you have the right vocalist for the best songs?
I think, you know, it's a little bit of both, probably. I never really thought about it too much. Sometimes Glenn would have an idea. I think Glenn mostly, he comes up with his idea, his song ideas. His composing starts with a guitar or a bass riff or something, and then he'll get melody hits on top of it, and he'll get lyric hits. Like he would come and go, I got this. He would tell me like the title of the song, and he would show me what he was thinking on the guitar, and then he'd sing something, and then he'd make adjustments later, but he'd have it all kind of roughed out in his head. With me, I was running, once he was set to join the band, I started to complete demos that were specifically for Glenn that I thought would inspire Glenn, with some funkiness to it, or more groovy, you know, more groovy stuff that I thought would be good for him. And I would give him, he would listen to it and he would start to formulate ideas. And sometimes I would go, and this is kind of what I was thinking melodically on the vocal. I wouldn't have any lyrics. I've never written a lyric before, really. But, and then he would take that and make it right. So it's probably both. The music was put together with him in mind for sure, because he's got to sing it, you know. And so people know, you know, a singer has to be inspired. You can't tell him this is our song and you're going to sing it. It doesn't work like that. I mean, maybe with Van Halen, they would do it like that, and Eddie would say, here's the music, now go write on it, and that would work. But generally, from my experience, guys like Ronnie James Dio, David Coverdale, and Glenn Hughes, they need to be inspired by the music, or they're not really going to want to sing on it. So it comes down to the singer going, dude, I love that, or I'm not really feeling that one. And cool. That's why I'm like, cool, let's put that on the back burner. And if I want to try and do a hard sell or something, I'll go, here, let's just come back to this just for a second, because I want to show you what I was thinking, because I want you to get the full picture. I would either play them a demo, or I would say, okay, we could change it. If it doesn't feel good in this key, we can change it to another key. Because sometimes, you know, the singer might go, I don't want to say that. I don't want to tell him to rewrite the song in a different key, but that's what my job is. So I'm totally all for it, you know. And sometimes, say for example, if you wrote a song and it was too low for Glenn, maybe it was too low, but it works really good on guitar, I have no problem, and I actually find it fun to try and rewrite the song in a proper key that fits his voice, because it opens up all kinds of other opportunities when you move it to a different position on the guitar. So I like that.
We're talking about bass, we're talking about vocals, but we can't forget the guitars on this album. I felt that the guitar playing on this record was outstanding, from the first track all the way to the last track. I mean, it doesn't matter what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter if I talk about solos, riffs, melodies, whatever. Everything surrounding the guitar was absolutely incredible. It felt very organic. How much of a roadmap and how much room did you give yourself to improvise perhaps a little bit when it came down to recording?
It was, you know, wherever the song came from, if it was a song that I had started to present to the band, I would have a good idea of what I was wanting to do. But I was also open to, if somebody said, you know, I like that, but what if it was played more like this? Or, you know, I think it's important to be open to suggestions from your bandmates. And so I was definitely open. And at the same time, you know, if Glenn brought a guitar riff or something, I want to learn it the way he is playing it, because there's a certain way that he plays it it's got a vibe. So before I would put my stamp on it, I would try to learn it with his integrity involved. And then once I owned it that way, then I could go, you know what, I really think instead of this being a tight thing, we should open it up and be more of a big power chord thing, or, you know, so it was just, it's a fun puzzle to be involved in, trying to figure out what the best treatment for each thing is. A lot of times when you don't think and you just play like we would do when we were tracking, it would show itself pretty immediately, like that feels good, that's kind of the way I should do it. Or if I felt like there were other options to play something, I would try and experiment a little bit. When it came to solos and stuff, there was some stuff that I really didn't know what I was going to do. So I just kind of went for it. And Holy Ground was one of those. It was kind of a first take, with the exception of the end. I had to fix it. But I didn't know what to do. I just kind of went for it. And actually, no, it wasn't the first take. I played a couple things, and then I played that one, and they go, "Whoa, that's cool." And I was like, I think I said, "All right, that sucked. Let's do another one." It was like, no, that was really cool, you know. And I was like, well, listen to it. Listen to the end. It's all messed up, and it says, "Well, just fix it," you know. So I dropped in, you know, punched in on it and fixed it, and that's a solo. It's just kind of off the cuff. But then there's other stuff like there's a song called "Come Alive," which when I was working on it, I had a melody that came in my head immediately, and I started off with that melody, and I got halfway through with that melody of the solo, and then I was like, I'm not sure where to go with it. And the Glenn's manager, Jimmy, said, "Dude, that's a great melody. You should just repeat it." I'm like, why didn't I think of that? You know? So I did the melody, and then I repeated it again and put a little tag at the end, and that was it. It was good. This album's more about songs and vibe than about, you know, individual performance, at least from my perspective. It's about making the vibe right. And I want to add too, David Lowy really puts his stamp on the thing. He has a very honest, youthful approach to the way he plays. He just digs in and plays, and he doesn't really think about it too much. It just has a thing. It's got a vibe, and it really is a good contrast to what I do. So I think that's important for the Daisies at this point, is that he and I have this thing together that is it's a good contrast. And then you slam Glenn's bass up the middle and Dino, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a very, at least to me, I had the impression of being a very organic record. In the way you're describing it, I get that feel as well, that it's an album that really comes from the heart, from all of you guys together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always try to put my heart into everything I do. And it's much easier to do that when we're in that situation where, like I said, we were locked in this chateau. And I say locked in because we were into what we were doing, and we were starting to gel as a band. It was very important to do that. And the first trip there, I think it was in November of 19. And I think for the first 10 days or so, I didn't go outside. You know, I didn't go off the grounds. It's just staying there. Eventually somebody said, there's a store down the road where you can get, you know, whatever groceries, you know, there's a grocery store. So you could grab something for your room, some beer or chips or whatever. And the first time I went, I found it, but then when I walked back, I missed the turn and got lost, had to use GPS to find out how to get back. But in fact, my phone it was in the south of France, and my phone wasn't working great there with the GPS. So I had to call the studio and say, here's the streets where I'm at, like, you know, these French street, Strasse or Rue. That's a road, a Rue.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm the Rue de Barge, you know, bagel, whatever, you know, and they're like, okay, just stay there. We'll come get you. Or I think that they walked out and waved, and that was like I was down the road a piece, but I had missed a turn. Anyways, back to the real story is that we were focused there. You know, it was good. It's easy to focus there when there's no distractions.
One last question I have for you, because I couldn't talk to you today about this record and not mention my favorite song on this album. So I kind of want to get a little bit of an inside look into how this song came about, and that is Like No Other. I just like, I love the album, don't get me wrong, but there's always a special one. And to
Yeah.
me, Like No Other is that special track. How did that song come about?
Well, we worked on it together. Everyone put their stamp on it. I mean, I originally presented the thing because I got inspired when management told me that Glenn was going to be involved. I was like, oh man, and they go, what do you think? I'm like, are you kidding? That would be amazing. And I felt like, why didn't I think of that too? And they said, well, give Glenn a call and he wants to talk to you. And I've known Glenn a long time. We've been friends. We were both part of Ronnie James Dio's funeral, and we jammed a few times together. I toured with him about 6 years ago or 5 years ago, something. So we knew each other really well. And I call him and I go, Glenn, is this for real? And he goes, yeah. He goes, Doug, I really believe it's our time to make some music together. And this is going to be awesome. He goes, I got some great ideas for us. And I'm like, cool. So I went in my studio and I was thinking about Glenn, and I'm like, oh, I know what he loves. You know, he loves grooves. He loves heavy grooves where he can, you know, do his thing on stage, you know? And so I just had a 2-note riff that was the main part of that riff. And then the chords kind of came to me. I had a vision like, okay, we'll start off with the riff. I kind of put it together in my head, like start off with the riff, and it could be any riff, but something like this would be good. And then we got these chord changes, and during the verse, let's have Glenn drop out and just do vocal with the 2 guitars, like David on one side, me on the other. And then when the chorus hits, let's not do a bridge. Let's go right to the chorus and have Glenn's bass kick in with the vocal, not knowing what the vocal was going to be, of course, just knowing that I knew he could write something great on it. And then I thought, you know, do a little kind of a Aerosmithy little solo tie in between those verses and choruses. And then after the second one, I felt like we could do some kind of psychedelic stuff, or there could be you know, maybe Glenn could solo, and he liked that idea. So I kind of just put a rough kind of vision together, and like, I never would have done that with the last lineup of Dead Daisies, because I wouldn't have wanted to say to Marco, hey, during the verse, I think you should just lay out and stand back and clap, you know, or something. I would never do that to Marco. He's a giant, you know, I wouldn't have thought of that. But with Glenn being the singer, I thought this is perfect. I can see him, you know, arms out, singing, preaching, doing his thing. And then when the band kicks in for the chorus, boom, he kicks in. And that was pretty much it. I played him the basic idea of the music, and everybody put their adjustments on it. And Glenn came up with, can you feel my bass line? Like no other, can you feel my bass line? And it just had a nice heavy groove to it, little funky, but not too much. And then that solo that he did was during the tracking. So when we played the song probably 5-6 times, and whichever one we picked, that bass solo is what he played.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great, it's a really nice little addition to that track.
Yeah, why not, man? Why not have a bass solo? He's one of the greatest bass players in the world. And he's got a little bit of, you know, he comes from the Entwistle, Chris Squire, these guys that were kind of lead bass players, you know, Geddy Lee and Glenn Hughes. These guys are all in the same zone. And I can't stress how cool that is. You know, I mean, of course, as a guitar player, you love it when a bass player kind of gets out of the way too. You know, it just goes boom, 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 boom. And then you're free to do whatever. But it's also really cool when you're playing off somebody and I'm doing something and I hear Glenn start to, I forget what he calls it, rail. Like he goes, I like to rail, you know? And and so when I hear him start to rail, I'll kind of get out of the way. I'll hold on that note for a second, you know, and let him, and all right, and then I'll answer him back. It's super cool.
Yeah, it gives a whole vibe almost just of a jam session. It doesn't feel like it's been overly worked. It has that organic feel, and I think that's something you guys were really able to capture with this record.
Well, that's due to a lot to Glenn's bass playing, because I mean, as people who know me know that I'm, you know, I'll do things off the cuff and I'll get lucky sometimes, but then other times I really have to, I got to dig deep to find the right thing. But Glenn just does it. It's like hit the record button and let him go and do it 4 times, and he's going to do 4 different performances, all great. It's just a matter of which one you go with, you know. It reminds me like Reb Beach, you know, from Whitesnake. Reb, I can give him a compliment of saying that he won't play the same thing twice. He just goes for it. And that, I think musician wise, that's a good thing to have. Because when you get stuck, like I was telling you about Holy Ground Soul, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I just started going for it. And I thought it didn't sound that great, but they said they liked it. So it was cool.
Sometimes when you're in it, it's hard to see the forest from the trees. So it's nice to have guys around that you trust their opinion, that you can bounce your own opinion off of them, and they can put you in your spot and say, no, you did the right thing.
Yeah, and sometimes Ben Gross would be like, I'd play something, and I was sure that it was a kick-ass part, you know, and I'd be like, here's what I'm thinking, and I'd be like, there, wait till I'm gonna hear what he's got to say about this, and he'd be like, he'd look at me and he'd be like, all right. I'd be like, what do you mean? Do you like it? And he goes, yeah, it's okay, you know. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, I mean, I love the way it starts, but it doesn't go anywhere, you know, or something. And I'm like, what are you talking? That's like a perfect solo right there. And he'd go, you know, go for it. Try something else. Let's see. And I'd do it. And I'd be like, yeah, I like the end of that one. I'm like, ah. And then I'd do something else, and I'd incorporate the beginning of mine that he liked with the end that he liked. And then he'd be like, I don't know, you know, it's just not really. And I'm like, dude, I want it to be like this. I want it to start off with fire, and then I want to hit a melody, and then I want to do a really cool thing at the end. And he'd be like, well, then just fucking do that. And so I'd start over, you know, and I'd get pissed off, and he didn't do it in a way like to piss me off, but he'd do it in a way to inspire me to get like more emotional about it. And then I'd do something, he'd be like, there you go. Why didn't you do that the first time? I'm like, because I wasn't as pissed as I am now, you know? But
that's great.
You know, recording comes in all different inspirations, and sometimes you get lucky on the first go, and sometimes you got to dig deep and be put in a corner to fight yourself out of it or something.
Well, Doug, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. The Dead Daisies, Holy Ground, January 22nd, the album comes out. Great album, great work, great lineup. We just need to get rid of this pandemic now so you guys can hit the road.
Yeah, man, we will. It's you know, we're getting rid of it slowly, but if we could speed that up a bit before springtime, that would be nice. But just want to thank you, Pedro, for everything, and all your listeners and viewers, and wish everybody a happy 21. Step by step, we're gonna somehow make this into a kick-ass year, you know.
I agree with you. All the best, man. Thank you for taking the time once again. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, bro.
Take care.